Hello and welcome to another Mr. Carter Science Special. This video is for the AQA GCSE Biology Course, Unit B18.11, making food production efficient. Always watch out for the learning outcomes and the syllabus references as we go through this video. If we are going to be making food production more efficient, this ties in with the idea of sustainability and sustainable solutions for food production. Sustainability, according to the Brundtland Commission, is understanding how to meet the needs of the present without compromising the needs of future generations to meet their own needs. So we need to bear this idea of sustainability in mind as we go through this PowerPoint and we think about the idea that we only have a certain amount of land, and how can we make the production of food from that land, from that area, as efficient as possible to provide food for the largest number of people that we possibly can, bearing in mind that the human population is increasing exponentially at the moment. So if we're going to do that, we need to consider the biomass in food chains, and in particular how we lose biomass as we move from one trophic level to the next. So if we think about the developed world, much of our diet consists of meat, and producing this meat requires a large area of land, a much larger area than producing plants for food. And this is all due to the loss of biomass as you move from one trophic level to the next. The increase in land used for meat production is harming the environment and increasing the production of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane, in particular from cattle production. But there's another issue. To increase the speed of meat productions, the animals that produce our meat, the goats, the cows, the chickens and the pigs, are often fed high protein animal feed, and this is produced from ground up fish, and this increases the length of the food chain and reduces the efficiency as more biomass is lost before the humans consume the meat, and therefore this process requires even more space on the planet to produce the meat. The Earth only has a limited amount of space or surface area, land area and also sea area, oceanic area, that can be used to produce food. The most energy efficient use of this space is to grow plants for food and eat them directly. The least amount of biomass will then be lost between producing the food and humans consuming the food. In theory, there would be plenty of food for everybody on the planet if only plant biomass was used to produce human biomass. Every extra step in the food chain results in less biomass at the end of the food chain, and so less food for the human population. Reducing the number of trophic levels in the food chain could massively increase the efficiency of our food production. Eating less meat is better for the environment and reduces greenhouse gas emissions and increases the amount of land available for the production of plant-based foods. So all the time we need to be thinking about the amount of biomass that we can produce per meter squared of land. And if we can increase that number, we will increase the efficiency of our food production and be able to support a much larger human population. Eating less meat is of course going to help us to be more efficient with the land that we can produce food from. However, in certain circumstances, eating meat can increase the amount of land available for food production. Some areas of land cannot grow crops, but they can grow grass. And sheep and goats and cows can feed on the grass and produce high value protein food from land that would otherwise not produce a crop. Much of the land in the Lake District in the UK is unsuitable for producing crops. However, animals like sheep and goats and cows can be farmed, making this land useful for food production. Now, animals lose biomass in feces, urea and movement, and people want to buy cheap milk, eggs and meat. To make good profit, farmers must get the maximum possible increase in biomass from animals as efficiently as possible. To increase the efficiency of food production, farmers often limit the movement of animals, and this will reduce the use of muscles and therefore the loss of biomass through respiration. Therefore, more biomass is available for food growth. Farmers can also carefully control the temperature to reduce the loss of biomass in the form of heat loss. There will be less respiration needed to maintain the temperature of the body, again, so less biomass will be lost in respiration. To achieve this, farmers will use a type of farming known as factory farming. Factory farming improves the efficiency of the food production process. It reduces animal movements because animals are often kept in cages with restricted spaces. This is known as factory farming. Chickens grown in this method can be ready to eat within weeks of hatching, and they have plenty of food and the correct temperature, so a minimal loss of biomass. This is highly efficient and a very good thing if we're considering how we can feed the ever-increasing human population on this planet. However, there are a number of disadvantages to factory farming. When a large number of animals are kept in a small space, there is an increased risk of diseases spreading quickly. So farmers must spend money to monitor for disease. However, this big disadvantage is balanced against the advantage of a fast rate of meat production, a very efficient system. We also need to consider the ethics. Factory farming methods must be used because there's an increased demand due to the growing human population. However, some unethical practices have now been banned in the UK and in the EU. For example, calves being kept in tiny pens for veal production, or chickens being kept in very, very small cages, both of which are banned to try and increase the ethical concerns for the animal welfare for the animals that we wish to consume. So if we think about the two different food production methods and their advantages, we can compare the two. So factory farming, animals are kept inside a barn. Animals appear to live an unnatural and a restricted life, even if there is plenty of space provided. The temperature is controlled and there are no problems with the weather. The animals will therefore have a very fast rate of growth because there is less biomass lost. We have a very, very efficient use of space. A large amount of animals can be grown in a very small area. There are, of course, some disadvantages. For example, the farmer will have to pay for heating and lighting costs. There are ethical concerns over the conditions the animals are kept in. And often the animals will be given a large amount of antibiotics to prevent the spread of disease. And this also increases the risk of antibiotic strains of bacteria evolving. So some people will prefer not to consume meat and dairy products from animals that have been factory farmed. They would prefer organically farmed animals, where animals will live outside and completely unrestricted. Animals will be allowed to move freely, but the animals will be growing far more slowly, so the process is less efficient. We need more space to grow the same amount of biomass in the animals to be consumed. So again, that is less efficient. We will lose a lot more biomass in movement and in respiration and in maintaining the internal temperatures of the body of the animals. However, this is all balanced against the fact there will be much fewer ethical concerns. There will be no heating and lighting costs. Fewer antibiotics will be used. However, in terms of the ethics, you must also consider that animals must cope with the poor weather conditions. They will be outside in the rain, the snow, the cold, and you may consider that animals, if they are offered the protection of a barn during winter, will often choose to go inside and to live within that barn when the weather conditions are at their worst. So factory farming is an intensive farming system, and they are now widely being developed with a far greater awareness of animal welfare than previously. Why? Because contented animals increase in biomass much faster than a stressed animal. Some animals even experience a better living condition than many humans on this planet. For example, in the Al Mari milk factory in Saudi Arabia, the largest herd of dairy cows are kept in the world. 37,000 cows are kept inside a water-cooled building with plenty of water and adequate space, and that's a lot more than many people in the world experience in their daily living conditions. So a modern farm is a managed ecosystem, and farmers control the environment to ensure that they maximize the yield of crops and plants and livestock. Farmers will be concerned and control factors like the ions or mineral ions in the soil, like nitrates, and they could do this by adding fertilizers or perhaps growing plants in a hydroponic culture. And the reason we need to do this is because extra mineral ions can be taken up and used to make proteins and other compounds that plants need for growth. And this will of course increase the biomass that the plants have, and that will be good for the food chain and good for human consumption. Farmers will also consider the soil structure. They will plough fields to break up compacted soil. They'll add manure to improve drainage and aeration of heavy clay soils. Why? Because good aeration and good drainage allow for a better uptake of mineral ions by active transport. There'll be more oxygen within that soil, which means that the root hair cells will be able to absorb more oxygen. There'll be more respiration in the mitochondria. They'll be producing more ATP, which allows them to have a faster rate of active transport, taking up more of these mineral ions, which will increase the growth of the plant. The soil pH. Farmers may add lime or calcium salts to acidic soils, and a few soils that are too alkaline, they might need some treatment by adding acidic compounds. Why is this? So that soil pH, it will affect the growth of crops, as an unsuitable pH reduces the uptake of mineral ions. In particular, an unsuitable pH might be damaging or reducing the efficiency of enzymes involved in some of the chemical reactions in the roots, and again reducing active transport. Carbon dioxide, light and heat are other factors that farmers may try and control. These can't be controlled in crops grown outside, but they can be controlled in crops grown in a glass house or a polytunnel or a greenhouse, where we can alter the carbon dioxide, light and heat levels by burning fuels, which will produce the heat, and by utilizing and carbon dioxide as well. And we can also utilize electricity to produce light to increase the amount of light the plants have, and therefore the amount of photosynthesis that can be going on. In fact, if you increase the temperature up to the optimum amount, when the carbon dioxide levels up to the optimum amount and the light levels up to the optimum amount, then the rate of photosynthesis is going to increase massively, and therefore more biomass will be created by the plants and they will grow faster and better, which again is very good for human consumption. So let's just have a little think about greenhouses, glass houses or polytunnels. How can they increase biomass? How can they increase the amount of plants available both for animal consumption and human consumption? Well, they will provide very controlled growing conditions for plants. Transparent walls will allow natural light for photosynthesis. Electric lighting provides additional light during winter. The increased greenhouse effect within the polytunnels will trap and increase heat energy, and it will raise the temperature. Fossil fuel heaters can be used if the temperature falls too low, and the fossil fuel heaters will also increase water and carbon dioxide levels within the polytunnel, which will increase the rates of photosynthesis. We could also use hydroponic conditions to provide the exact and correct mineral concentrations required by the plants. Hydroponics means growing plants without soil. Plants are grown with their roots in a very carefully controlled solution of water and minerals, and the hydroponic conditions provide the exact correct mineral concentrations needed for growth. And you can have many layers of hydroponic plants above each other, each in the hydroponic trays, with the lights below the previous tray allowing photosynthesis for the plants in the tray below that. And this can be incredibly efficient and a really good use of space, allowing more biomass to be grown per metre squared than a traditional farm. Another area of food production that we need to consider is the production of food from fish resources in the oceans. As the human population has increased, the mass of fish caught from the oceans has increased. However, the size of various fish populations in the oceans has actually decreased. This is due to continued fishing by ships and trawlers, which is not sustainable. Now remember, sustainability is understanding how to meet the needs of the present without compromising the needs of future generations to meet their own needs. So what could one possible solution be? Well, perhaps fish farming might be a sustainable solution that will provide the human population with a source of fish which will be sustainable. Fish are a good source of high quality protein, and fish farming or aquaculture is meeting the needs for fish and shellfish as a food supply. This has gone up from 5% in 1970s to 50% of the world's seafood being produced by fish farming in 2019. Fish are kept in a densely stocked tank or enclosures in rivers and lakes, or possibly even the sea like this, and this is known as the fish farming technique. There's a lot of advantages to fish farming. Again, we can see a fish farm in the lochs of Scotland here. Water quality can be monitored, the temperature, the oxygen, the water clarity, the amount of chlorophyll or algae, and can all be modified if necessary. The diet of the fish can be controlled, so there's a high quality and high frequency that we can consider when we're feeding the fish. What are we feeding the fish? Are we giving them enough protein so they'll have fast, efficient growth? There's a protection from predators, so there'll be less fish lost, which means more efficient use of biomass. There's a protection from parasites because we might use pesticides to control them. The fish can be stored by size, so that in one particular pen you'd have fish of one particular size and maybe a smaller size elsewhere, and this will prevent cannibalism. Selective breeding can be used to produce faster growth and less aggressive fish. Antibiotics can be given to the fish to prevent disease, and the fish can be selectively bred for fast growth. However, there's also a lot of disadvantages to fish farming. There are many environmental concerns. There is a greater potential for a spread of disease. Antibiotics used may enter the food chain and may be eaten by humans. There's an increased risk of antibiotic resistance bacteria evolving. The feces from the fish can cause algal blooms and eutrophication. Pesticides used may be toxic to other non-harmful invertebrates affecting the food chain. The food pellets that you feed the fish in these fish farms are made from herrings or sardines, and these are taken from wild stocks of herrings and sardines, and this decreases their numbers. For example, 1 kilogram of farmed salmon needs 7 kilograms of wild fish, and again we have to consider that this increases the length of the food chain and therefore decreases the amount of biomass per area that can be produced. So fish farming is not always the sustainable and environmentally friendly method of producing food for the human population that it may seem, but we must consider how to make food production more efficient if we are going to continue as a species to increase in number on this planet. Now, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video today. If you have, please like and subscribe, comment below to tell me what you've learnt, and thank you very much for watching.